I'm here with Paul Rabil. And one of the things I fucking dig is I dig sitting down with people that are the greatest at what they do, but not everybody knows who they are.
Yeah.
Which is weird. And I did that with, early on with, we had a guy, Kane Wasylenchuk, who is by far the best racquetball player like ever to exist.
Amazing.
Like 8 world championships in a row, has lost 1 match in like the last 9 years. And like you go, Kane Wasylenchuk, and everybody's like, who the fuck is that? But lacrosse is obviously a much bigger sport than racquetball. But still, it's one of those things that people know about it, but you're fucking crushing it. Like 4 MVPs in the league and like all the accolades that you could possibly have, but you're not a household name.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I talk about often. And I think there's an interesting balance in sports where, as a profession, if you're lucky enough to play and get through college and play professionally, that there's an economic prosperity component that athletes strive for, but there's also a level of vanity in playing in the NBA or the NFL and being talked about regularly. But that's both self-serving for athletes that I think sometimes, and it's another topic that we might delve into, are challenged with when they eventually retire or stop playing sport, is all of that attention and that support that they get along the way creates this persona and almost this needy state of being. And that's why you see a lot of athletes, we hear primarily around athletes going broke, but I think the transition away from sport is a lot around losing the public attention and the appeal that you once had. And to your point, like, we don't have that in lacrosse, but it's one of the reasons why we launched the Premier Lacrosse League is to solve for that, to build commercial viability around the game, because it's something that a sport has been growing for so long. It's the oldest sport in North America. It was founded by the indigenous people. Mm-hmm. It has become in the last 3 decades more associated with this like Northeast elite preparatory school system sport. And just like any stereotypes, there are certain people and outcomes that have led to the continued fuel around where lacrosse is sometimes perceived in mainstream or even kind of sports media. So, look, I play this game because I love it, and the opportunity that you get as an athlete, and this as a multi-sport athlete, to build relationships and to learn and to really prosper personally, because you get through sports or entertainment a key that unlocks doors that otherwise are bolted shut. Yeah. And that's something that I really love about what I do.
It's interesting thinking about that, because I think sports, and when you take them professionally, and also military can be like this too, it creates an environment where you have a tribe, and the tribe has a common goal, and the goal is our win. Typically, I mean, you can have selfish and self-serving players and whatever, but those teams don't end up doing that well, and those players don't end up really being the ones that are exceptional for the most part. It's this adoption of a tribal mentality. It's our team, it's our effort. We're going out and we're trying to win cumulatively, and we share the spoils of that win, even though the contracts might be different, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's something, I think it's like a fundamental craving of the human nature. Plus, it tests yourself. Plus, there's the struggle, plus there's all these things. To give that up, to retire from the military, and the military is the same. You got your platoon, you got your squad, you got your objective, you got your mission. It's our mission. We're all in this together. Nobody left behind. It's this whole same mentality that we really only get it in sports or the armed forces. Yeah. And then to like be done with that, and you're like, fuck, what do I do? Like golfing foursome? Like
it's hard. Guess. Yeah, in sports, you're constantly in an immediate feedback loop.
Yeah.
Right? Every off season, you're training for the next season. So that's probably the longest period that you have to endure as an athlete. But once you get in season, you have weekly games on weekends that are basically going to say your practice, all your scouting, all of your training paid off or it didn't. And if it did, you continue down that track as you won. If you lost, you sit and you sulk and you're really pissed off, and then you work harder and then you hopefully win. But it's like immediate feedback. And then the fans get that experience too. I think sport is so unique, but when you leave sport, to your point, and then you enter kind of the endurance of life, it's not as immediately gratifying or negative in some cases, which often inspire us to change. So I think that's also jarring for a lot of professional athletes that are used to having their work test out every week.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I've always thought too, like one of the appeals of traditional martial arts is you get belts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you get an external point, like a goal and external validation would say, okay, you've moved from white belt to blue belt. Like, fucking congratulations. You now get to wear that thing forever, right? Yeah. Life doesn't do that. It's not like as an entrepreneur, it's like, I guess you can count money or count your gross revenue or something like that, but you don't ever really get that. And you don't get that certainly in your own spiritual development. You get none of that. And in your own emotional development and mental development, you don't get like belts where your sensei like ties a fucking ribbon around your body. It's like, hey, you conquered jealousy. Congratulations. You're a fucking red belt.
Right.
You know, like you don't get that shit, but you do get it in sports.
Yeah, you do. And I think sports, so this is a fascinating topic. I haven't really like rounded out yet, but I talk a lot about it in therapy. As my life changed in 2014. I talk about life because I was one of those athletes that life was defined by what I did on the field. And even in our small world of attention, the people in lacrosse know who I am. And like most athletes, you think, everyone expects you to win. And if you don't win, you're a failure. And so in 2014, we had our world championships.
If you're a failure, you're not worthy of love, and then you don't love yourself, and then you don't even believe the love that even your lovers love you because
you're not working hard enough.
Yeah, because you're a fucking loser.
That's right.
Because you're a loser, and nobody should love you, especially yourself.
Yeah.
Because you should have won, and you should have done better, and you should have known how to train better, and you should have fucking made that goal when you missed that goal, you fucking bitch.
Took the opponent lightly. All that shit.
Oh yeah, I've been.
We weren't prepared.
Yeah.
You underestimated your opponent. I look at coaches and say that even at the Division I level in any sport, it's like, hey man, I gotta let you know, no one at this level is underestimating anyone. I mean, it's just like you've never played lacrosse before, but if you put on equipment and a stick, I wouldn't underestimate going against Aubrey Marcus right now. It's like he's an athlete and he's gonna try to fucking hit me.
Yeah,
and so I better be ready.
I might drop the ball a lot, but what we do, we get frisky. I don't know what happened.
So what sport is, I think, as I was kind of talking about. So that moment for me in 2014, we had our world championships. I had been on the previous world team in 2010, and we had won a gold medal. And then in 2014, we had what many people said, and kind of backed by statistics, the best team ever with Team USA. And we lost to Canada on home soil. And in the following week, we went back to our pro league, and I broke my foot, and I felt like let the country down. I was a star player, and I didn't have a good game, and then I got injured, and what am I going to do next? And it was like a pretty dark and downward spiral that I went on. And my agent at the time, who was at Octagon, she told me that she could help me find a sports psychologist. So sports psychology was like the entree for a lot of athletes that don't want to say therapy, because there's this notion in like the public
therapy is vulnerability is a problem with you, and blah blah blah. But sports psychology, I'm just getting better, bro.
Totally,
I'm just optimizing, man.
Optimizing my performance. Yeah, exactly. And like therapy, like society, what's wrong with you? So, and so. Anyway, I got into sports therapy. I had a great sports psychologist. His name was John Elliott. And what we did quickly was figure out how to solve for a temper that I had that would permeate its way off the field, and identify certain hardest worker in the room, never going to be kind of outplayed, outpunched, out whatever. And then I transitioned because we were able to solve for some of these tactics, or solve for some of these problems tactically. And then I got into personal therapy, which has been life-changing and an evolution for me. But during that process, I mentioned John Elliott, is we started like surmising around, hey, while many people look at sports, especially in like youth into high school and college, as a great crossover skill set, embodiment of team and leadership that transitions into life, family, workforce, there's this small percentage group that go from college to pro, where that can actually begin to erode your personal development. And the notion that like someone's always on your heels, the notion that like you can never back down from anything or anyone, that stuff gets celebrated. And as that becomes part of your 30-year-old being, you lose track of and you miss almost that decade of like real life personal development where like other people's feelings matter and talking to them and deciding that like, hey, it's not just you. Wow. And so because
that external validation becomes a crutch at a certain point. You know, like that short feedback loop, which is artificially created by the career that you're in, and how much it matters more than everything else to everybody around you, creates this kind of play reality.
Yep. It's juxtaposed in a way where athletes, it also adds difficulty to that transition. I'll talk about kind of two of my idol basketball players. One is Michael Jordan. Growing up, we watched Michael. I'm sure you watched him just for his sheer talent, competitive nature. But many say that like he still is a disruptor in a room. Socially, his Hall of Fame speech was difficult to watch and listen to. Still had a lot of animosity. And you worry that like, you know, how much does that eat at him regularly? Is that something that I want to do for the rest of my life or feel? And then you look at Kobe Bryant, who was like Mike's successor.
Yeah.
And that transition, I think it's around injury. I don't know Kobe personally, but I have some kind of mutual connections into him, is that, you know, he went through these Achilles tears and all this stuff, and then it changed. His last 2 seasons, like his leadership, his style on the floor, he was thanking fans, he was talking to his opponents. Up to that point, it was cutthroat. He would have his teeth out, his fangs would be out when he was playing.
The Mamba.
And now, you know, look at how he's transitioned so well. And he's so articulate, and he's an amazing businessman, and he's an amazing content creator. And so I don't know if he went through a metamorphosis while he was playing or if his transition was really quick, but I suspect that he had that same type of inward erosion around trying to balance what life is outside of sport, because professional really inflames a lot of those challenges.
Yeah, well, it's resistance, right? And then we all get the choice about how we adapt to resistance. You know, like you can't lament the situation. You just have to accept the situation, see it, observe it with clear awareness, and be like, oh, here's the pressures that are coming on me as a human. Maybe it's you're fucking famous like Justin Bieber and it's fucking happened really quick, and all of a sudden people are throwing panties at you and you're a 17-year-old dude, you know, and you're like, damn, that's some pressure. And the thing is, like, without having a tribe around you, the elders, the wise ones, the ones who've been through it, who can be like, hey, young Justin, come sit with me in the cave. Let's do some psilocybin and talk about this pressure of the journey you're about to do. Shit's going to get fucking squirrely.
It's huge.
You know, and I think that's the thing that we're missing, is that kind of tribal element where the elders can smile and have seen the outcomes and understand this. And, you know, people have to search for that. Like you had to search for your sports psychologist, sports therapist, somebody who was in that mentorship role. And then you can now be that in some ways to other people. I'm sure you do that for the younger players. And that's one of the things that the veterans do for the rookies. Like, hey, like young superstar, like here's the path, here's the pressure, here's the temptations, here's the things, but here's the way to ground yourself back. And here's the way to move through all this.
Yeah. I think mentorship is a big piece that you're alluding to, and being fortunate to have a tribe around you, or if you're not, you know, like in my case, have an older brother who's my business partner, but has been through the trenches in advance of me going through them, where he was constantly, and still to this day, I check myself getting aggravated with him, because he'll be really direct as we have that bloodline tie, and he knows that it will always supersede, you know, short-term aggravation and his, like, you know, continual prodding at my ego, which is a good thing. I'm lucky to have him and great parents, and I've always kind of sought, going even back to our first point in conversation, was how lacrosse is small relative to like its commercialization globally and nationally, is that has, and now across the relationships that I've forged in other sports leagues with prime players, is you know, a lot of them ask like how I had time to build businesses and how I had time to invest in media the way I did and do stuff. So like, well, the flip side of the coin in playing in a part-time league formerly in low wages, I had all of this extra time during the week to build shit.
Yeah, ESPN the magazine wasn't living at your house.
No. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so like Kevin Durant, he's spending all of his time because it's so competitive in the NBA, and Andre Iguodala like continuing to perform, and it's super competitive in professional lacrosse, but it was part-time until what we did and brought in. But I had all of this open time to invest and build, and so that's like the benefit that I was able to extract from my current situation. But mentorship, man, it's huge. I was always going out and networking and asking for advice and just believing that at some point I would be able to connect and grow and not look for economic or some type of monetizational outcome. It's more or less like, hey, these are people that I aspire to be like or to have conversations with and learn from. So let me kind of stick my neck out there and see if that can be earned.
Yeah. That's fucking rad. So I got to talk to you about this league that you're starting because I'm friends with a lot of MMA fighters.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those MMA fighters are pretty fed up with their current league situation, right? And so there's some other leagues that they can kind of play around with. But the idea that a fighter could create a league for fighters, which is kind of like what you're doing.
Yep.
It's like the best lacrosse player creates a league for lacrosse players and brings it out into fruition. Like the idea that a fighter could create that and like know what fighters have to go through, like understand the sacrifice. It'd be like, that would be pretty fucking cool if that kind of existed. And I think some of that stuff kind of existed. I think Boss Rutan's part of this Bare Knuckle League, and there's some stuff that's happening that's cool. And but it's just a really cool concept that you're saying like, all right, the league was designed by people who don't really know what the needs and what the true players are going through and what the potential of this thing is. I'm going to do it while I'm still playing, and I'm going to fucking play in my new league.
Yeah.
And we're going to see what happens here.
Yeah. It's been a wild 2 years of building this. And we just came out of stealth mode on October 22nd. We made our announcements across Bloomberg and Yahoo and Bleacher and NBC, who's our media partner. We went about this process. I say we is lucky to have my mentor and older brother as the co-founder and CEO of the Premier Lacrosse League. So our original goal was to go about this process through M&A. As look, we're investors. We've operated before. Our investors at the time share ideologies. We don't think we're these sharp-elbowed guys looking to come into lacrosse and just like pull with all the players the assets away from the incumbent and start something new because we know more than you. That's not our mindset. But as you know, it's really difficult to get any deal done from the multi avenues of M&A, and especially in a pro sports league where you have autonomous owners. So you essentially have to go strike deals across the table. But we were really transparent from the beginning that we felt so much conviction around where our sport could go given new media and new technology. And you mentioned MMA and UFC's proliferation over the last decade plus. You look at MLS, which pulls, I think, primarily from its global awareness of football, but they've done a fantastic job. But PBR, Street League Skateboarding, World Surf League, esports, like all of this opportunity, non-Big Four, is available because of these mobile devices and these platforms, right? Which allow us to directly connect to our fans. And if you're a lacrosse 10 years ago, we're not even considering this business because the only way you can connect with your fan is through linear media.
Yeah.
Television, print, radio. And so now we're able to control that. The startup costs with new technology have decreased. So you're able to build and test and pilot new initiatives. And then, sports, as many predictors in the space say, is the most compelling form of original content available because you don't know what the outcome is.
And it's also, the beautiful thing about sports, all right, there's the skill component, there's the competitive, you can join an identity with the team and root for a team and then be emotionally invested. There's a lot of that. But the fucking magic happens when you see human beings tested, like really tested.
Amazing.
And then in those moments, you get to see them respond to a great test, something that matters. And that's when it gets like that mind-blowing moment. And you can see that in sports, in any sport, where you just see someone reaching a little bit farther than than what would be normally capable. And the greatest moments of my life watching sports have always been that. It's been fighters who were like underdogs and just performed at 110%, and they just did an incredible. Or like even, I watched Dwayne Wade when he was in Miami before LeBron was there, and they won that championship, and he just fucking took over.
Amazing.
Took over. I think they were playing the Mavericks, and it was just like, no, this game, this time will not go down a different way. And you watch that, or even Vince Young at the fucking Rose Bowl when he was playing Texas USC. Like, it was just like a human. It was like a human that was just like, no.
Yeah.
It goes this way, and you're like, fuck, this is so inspiring.
That's right. It's inspiring. Those are the compelling moments too. And even what UFC has done well and what the NBA has done better than anyone is that those compelling moments get amplified when you actually know the story of that athlete or the person under the helmet.
It's essential almost.
Then you care more.
Then you care, yeah.
Then you care more, because those last second shots, those come from behind victories, are awesome, and they happen in lacrosse. But if you don't know the team or the people who are coming from behind, it's just less compelling. It's more of a highlight. And so you have like Vice, and you have Complex, and you have groups that live at the intersection solely on telling the narrative of the athletes. And then you have the live broadcasters, the big networks, production companies, and now the digital platforms that are producing the games. And that's what Ultimate Fighter did early on. Is they said, all right, we've got a kick-ass product, but
let's get people to know these guys.
You got to know these guys, and then we also have to, like, in a really kind of tricky and way through osmosis, educate people on these intricate grapple holds on the mat, because most people are used to like looking at boxers punch each other's heads, and so now all of a sudden these matches are won on the mat, and people are like, "What the fuck? What just happened?" So they're able to accomplish both. And in a sport like lacrosse, where it's really technical, we look at original programming through the same lens, and how can we produce that and tell the story of our athletes?
Yeah,
so
that's essential. I think Whitney, my fiance, she worked for Glory Kickboxing. An amazing fucking sport. It's the best kickboxing league in the world. But the one thing that they don't do a great job of, in my opinion, is telling the story of these athletes, of these kickboxers. Like, there's a couple that people know some things about, like Badr Hari, like the superstars. They get a little extra press. They get a little extra promo. You can follow them a little bit, and you kind of know them, and that'll make a compelling thing where they can sell out an arena, and you'll have people talking about it. But if you don't know anything about these random combatants, the knockouts are incredible, and you go, wow, but it doesn't have the traction that something like the UFC does, where you start to hear stories. You see all those kind of behind the scenes images and plays, and the Instagrams and the follow, and all of this stuff that actually creates that truly compelling viewing experience.
And I love how leagues just think it's on the players to market themselves on social media. Well, I'll say the NBA, they are really good at allowing their players to be activists, allowing them and getting behind them through, whether it was Adam Silver changing the dress code policy so that they can show their fashion side before games, and positioning cameras around these athletes away from the court. They do that. But the athletes are generating their content. And in many cases, athletes are building teams to help them, because not every athlete is an entertainer innately or know how to create content. And we talk about that with our athletes and my peers, is like, we're going to create with them, and in many cases for them. And I think a lot of leagues expect that athletes are just going to know how to do it, and they don't. And a lot of entertainers don't know how to do it. I mean, this setup right here it inspires me, right? We walk into the Soho Grand, coming into a hotel room, and there's this big rigged audio setup, right? It takes vision. It takes mapping out, powerful audio, cameras. Like, this kind of stuff doesn't happen from scratch.
Yeah. And it's, I'm friends with a lot of players in the NFL, and fighters, I think, all innately know, because the contract, they're not getting that much money in general. So they kind of know that the part of the game is the social media grind, because it helps get them fights. It helps get them out of the ring sponsorships and things like that. But NHL players and some of the other MLB players and things like that. Football players tend to be actually a little bit better on social media from my personal experience. But NHL and MLB in particular, they're just kind of like, yeah, I know I probably should, but yeah, fuck it.
Locker room culture in those two sports specifically.
It's a weird thing.
Well, I know a number of NHLers, and my former agency was really long in baseball. And just for the same reason why, like, if in baseball, if you flip a bat, I never played, but if you flip a bat, it starts a fight, right? Like, don't gloat in baseball. Their culture there is like, do not gloat. Don't talk shit about your opponents.
Yeah.
No, right? And so they are, for a reason, behind the NBA and the NFL or UFC. And hockey's similar. I think that's more of like the Canadian culture that is really kind of built around respect of your opponent and then kicking the shit out of them on ice, but then afterward also respect and always being like really above the bar in outwardly showing that. That's just culture of those two leagues. And it reminds me a lot of the NCAA for the most part, where you have a lot of strict policies in place that discourage athletes from, showing their competitive nature, which is galvanizing for the public to see. And then a lot of coaches don't want their players to misspeak because then they have to deal with it with the university and all that stuff.
And also this idea that you have to conform to what your fans expect of you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I know I'm really tempted to just call out his name, but like one of the players I know is he's just one of the funniest fucking dudes. Yeah. He's just hilarious and goofy and hilarious. And it's like, but that's not what you really see on his. So you see, he'll let a little bit of it out. But like if he leaned into that, and like wove in some of the hockey and wove in some of him just being him, and like he would blow the fuck up. People were like, this dude fucking cracks me up.
It's a crazy
He's the
thing,
best,
man. Social media, there's two things. One is that he probably could benefit from someone or a team or a director helping him show that. Yeah. Because we tell a lot of athletes, like, part of the crutch is that when they come out, they'll see someone like LeBron and his strategy on social, which has been paying dividends. In our sport, you look at, the way I will vlog or my podcast, and everyone thinks like in basketball, I should do something like LeBron or do something like Paul. And that's not the strategy. It's like, what makes you authentic and unique? And I have a buddy who sounds exactly like that. It's insanely funny. And when he posts on social, it's more about like a workout, which everyone fucking posts that. So like, you're really funny. You have a gift. How do we show that? So it's like creatively putting him in those situations where he can embrace the camera. And then the other thing, going back to our conversation around being secure as a human, is putting yourself out there. And you know this better than anyone. On social requires a level of vulnerability. You have to have gone through the scars and the pain of like, being at some point a highly insecure individual, which we all are going through life, especially when we're young, and being able to break through that. And being active on social is like one of the most vulnerable things you can do.
Totally. I get that. And I think it's funny though, because athletes have to deal with, I guess it's just part of the job that you have to deal with that. I mean, you screw something up in your sport and you have people who hate you.
Literally
literally hate you. It's fucked up. That's really fucked up.
It's a mess.
And it's universal, or you're like move teams. Like people in Cleveland hate LeBron all of a sudden, even though they love. It's like, what, man? He's fucking going to the Lakers. Just like, be happy for him. Cheer him when he comes back to Cleveland. He did fucking amazing things for your city. Like, everybody relax.
I know.
But everybody gets so emotionally invested. I wonder if there's this kind of, well, in some ways that could make you tougher. In a way, like, oh, fuck it. People are just I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to let that. But in a way, maybe some people are like, man, I already got to deal with enough shit. I'm not going to actually let them attach to my real emotions and my real self because they're already hating me over my fucking activity. Yeah. Let alone my fucking soul. You want me to show them my soul and let them devour that? No, fuck these monsters.
Totally. And that's a big decision that athletes have to make, or anyone has to make. It's one of my through some of my learning curve that I'm just want to like say to your listeners, I hope I'm not coming off as like someone who's like has this sense of enlightenment. That's not the case at all. Like life's really hard, and I'm deep in build right now, and I struggle daily. But an author that I like, it kind of really popularized over the last 5 years, is Brene Brown. And in one of her books, she says, be really intentional around what you want to share and who's worthy of that share. And so you and I are both really active on social. We have podcasts, and we talk about our lives publicly. And we've chosen to do that and have done the work to feel, in some cases, good about it. In other cases, get shitty feedback. Yep. But
sometimes we take a few BBs, a few paintballs, maybe a few sucker punches. Yeah, no doubt.
But I think for some athletes, it's you don't have to also show certain things that are important to you. So you have to make a decision around what your asset is to the point around the athlete or the athletes that we both know, and that humor is like that levity. Show that. But if you have scars you're not comfortable sharing, you don't have to share them.
Share them when you're ready.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think there's no time frame or time limit on how to do that, but there is nothing that feels better than actually radical vulnerability, because radical vulnerability means that you're abandoning all your projections, you're abandoning all the things. So yeah, all right, if you're an athlete and you keep everything hidden, like people won't hate, they will hate and love you for not you. They will hate and love you for your performance, which is an externalization, an avatar of a part of you, right? But you will never actually feel the love truly yourself. You'll understand that people acknowledge your skill and they'll acknowledge whatever, but you'll never really feel appreciated. But you'll never really feel attacked either, because it's just a very secluded part of you. It's like an isolated part of you. Or you have another idea, and that idea is like, you know what? I have this skill set, but I'm also going to push forward as my whole self, and I'm going to show everybody my whole self. And so some of the hate that comes is going to land on my whole self.
Yeah.
But guess what? The majority is going to be love, because people love seeing people who are vulnerable. They love seeing that their superstar, their icon, that person that they look up to being has the same problems as them and goes through the same shit and has hard days in the morning. And that actually inspires even more love. So overwhelmingly, you're opening your true self up to actually feeling and receiving the love from the people around you. So it's this kind of thing. Like, do it when you're ready, because you will have some painful parts, but you'll also get the fucking magic parts. And the magic parts are going to come from that radical expose of all the parts of you that are.
Yeah, that's well said. I'd be curious in your approach, at least on social, but as I've begun to think more critically and try to become more empathic and understanding, especially in this world now where there's such a cultural, political, and social divide continuing to be pushed on us, but seeming like on a daily basis, is I've found that there's this big world of trolls out in social media and people ignoring them. And I've sat on athlete panels and with athletes that I aspire to be like, and they have certain strategies around not talking not talking back or responding to trolls. I've found that in business and in social media, that if you can, with the right communicative tactics, because I think it is really tactical to be not only empathetic, so that's a feeling, but then the way that you communicate that empathy back to someone who is just seeing what you're doing through a different lens, to be able to allow them to feel heard is how you address it. Like you can't say like, I'm being empathetic, but here's why I said this. It's just like, you have to be able to understand where they're coming from and acknowledge their position. And so, when we launch a new league, as we predicted, there's a lot of people that are fans of, the established kind of what they're used to, ebb and flow of a lacrosse season professionally. And of course there's going to be questions, and we have to understand those questions and we respond to them. And I found, even that example aside, and personal posts that I'll make, if I respond to a quote unquote troll and do so in a healthy communicative manner, also completely non-defensive, right? Because that's the nasty version of yourself that inflames the
Well,
position.
if you're defensive, you're basically signaling that you have something to defend, which means you're insecure about that thing, and that you need to, like, it would be like if a tiny little, mouse started scratching at the platinum scales of a dragon, and the dragon rears up and gold pieces fly everywhere and it roasts this fucking little mouse. You'd be like, that dragon is a bitch.
Yeah.
Just fucking let the mouse scratch on your scales. Like, it doesn't matter, give it a smile and be like, okay, mouse, you trying to eat my fucking gold scaled tail? Not going to happen, bud.
Where do you come? How are you so strong analogously with all this stuff? It's a powerful communicative trait.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
it's just come to you.
It just comes to me, man. It just fucking comes to me.
Unbelievable.
But yeah, I mean, it's like anytime you do that, you have to realize it's coming from your insecurity. Because if you really are secure in something, it's like funny. Yeah. Like if you've really plumbed those depths, and you really know yourself, then it's like, oh man, I see where you're coming. It's either sympathetic, empathetic, compassionate. I'm like, oh man, I see where you're coming from. I feel what you're feeling, and I respect that. Here's my perspective, but you're totally entitled to yours.
Yeah,
because you just don't have that. It doesn't sting. It doesn't hurt. But when you're like a little bit insecure, that's when those fucking things hurt, and that's when you want to jump in to defend and shit like that.
Yeah, and what I love about social is that it's more times than not, it's delayed. It's delayed live is what I like to describe it, but it's in text form. So it's the best way to get repetitions around empathetic responses.
Yeah.
You step back, like someone take that 2014 game. You had a shot at the end, Paul, and you missed it, and Canada won. What a shitty shot. And like my thought immediately as an athlete, I know athletes identify this as like, well, I got pushed from behind, or I trained my ass off leading up to this, and I wanted to hit that shot, and I usually hit that shot, and so you're like at that person for condemning you, where if you step back, you're actually like, yeah, I did miss that shot, and not only did I miss it, but I feel awful about it, and I respond to the person with that text, and they're like, shit, man. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, bro.
I'm sorry, man. I'm a big fan, actually. Sorry I wrote that. Seriously.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
wild. And so my broader point was, I'm curious, and what you do communicatively, or if you run into that that much. I know you have a lot of great support in community. Is that in business or personally, if you address those trolls and have a healthy conversation, they're the ones that turn into your mavens. Yep. And by word of mouth, they go out and they're the biggest Aubrey Marcus fans. Yep. And they're buying on it and they're sharing on it. And they're doing that authentically because you had a conversation with someone who wanted to be heard so much that they were willing to criticize you publicly.
Yep. No, it's absolutely the case. And overwhelmingly, you're right. And then those moments are really cool when you actually get to receive that, because then it also reframes the whole paradigm that they have, which is attack, defend, and attack and defend, attack it like it's a sparring match.
Yeah.
But when you go fucking Gandhi style, MLK style, and you're like, my hands are down, bro. Like, you can keep swinging if you want, and it's not going to hurt me, but I just sympathize with where you're coming from. And then they're like, oh man, I'm not going to keep punching this defensive guy. And look, he really is. He really is someone worthy
right.
of my, attention.
Right.
And it kind of changes the whole. It kind of changes the whole frame.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing you can do. Now, can you do that with every single one? It's probably not scalable.
No. Right.
But picking those moments, and then it always ends up turning positive. And also, like, when you pick those moments in like an Instagram comment, I've had times where there's been hundreds and hundreds of likes on the response to the most hateful comment,
totally.
Where people are like, dope, that was a dope response. Like, that was a good test and respond, a model that we can all use, because we all receive criticism. 100%. And then we all have to understand, whether it's on social or whether it's personal, like, how are we going to respond to this criticism?
Totally. And what is so fantastic, as I kind of tie a bow on sport, is like entertainment, or for better or worse, politics, and when you look at people in a position of influence, I think sport is different. I'll actually subtract my comment around politics, because it's even divisive in media, right? And people just continue to stay in their bubble and recycle, the listenings and learnings that they believe, and so they don't get out and cross pollinate. What you get with sport, which is so fascinating, I'll use LeBron as an example one more time, with Laura Ingram's comment last year around shut up and dribble, and then their hashtag we will not shut up and dribble as athletes, and Uninterrupted, who is LeBron's company with Mav Carter, got behind that, is that with sport, you have people from different political views, racial views, religious, sexual orientation, all following either their favorite athlete in the city that they grew up in or their favorite athlete agnostic of city because they care about sport. And so what we have as influencers, entertainers, is that you can and should take advantage of that opportunity to speak your truth.
Yep.
And share something worthwhile.
Yep.
Because you're actually one of the few people in that position that can cross-pollinate.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And I think there is this just kind of, I think athletes get kind of calloused from the savagery of fans.
You're exposed for sure.
And like you're seeing in some ways the worst sides of people because both the love and the hate is both equally unjustified.
Oh,
it's equally unjustified. Yeah. So like all the praise you get for fucking doing the thing that you've been practicing your whole life to do. Oh, okay, you scored 3 goals. Everybody throws their favorite fucking hat on the ice.
Yeah.
Like cool. Like, yeah, that's a good day. But a lot of fucking factors had to be in place.
Yep.
You know, like there's a lot of chance there and a lot of effort. Like I'm glad you all are celebrating, but don't love me for this.
Yeah.
Like you don't love me for this, nor should you hate me when I fucking fall on my face on that penalty shot that, I'm supposed to make to win the fucking, you can't. So you see this kind of dark side. It's not dark, but you see just kind of the very human side where people are attaching their conditional love to you.
Yeah.
And the conditional love based on your performance, which is that ultimate form of resistance that all athletes have to face. Like I fucking experienced that with my dad. I score 25 points in a basketball game. I come home, dad's happy. The love is easily received and flowing and there's excitement and there's laughter. I fucking blow it and I score like 6 points, when my average is 18 or whatever the fuck it was, and like have a bad game. It's like the whole house is sullen. Yeah. Like everything is fucking changed. So I learned that I'm more worthy of love from my father, the patriarchal understanding of the world, if I perform well. And athletes all have that. If not their parents, it's culturally, it's everywhere. So it's just reinforcing over and over and over again this conditional love element, which might be why I've seen so many of these athletes reach out to me for like, hey man, like I kind of want to go with you to Peru and do some of these psychedelic experiences where I can experience what you discuss as the universal love that is the substrate of all life that doesn't fluctuate and they want to like feel this other thing because they've just been washed in the most conditional love of all time.
Well, yeah, sports, the top athletes in the world, they're very rarely present, which is really interesting. And the reason is to reach that level of success, you have to have that never enough mentality, that I'll never stop. And so what made me think of that is your acknowledgement of like the highs and glory in a hat trick and the lows of missing a penalty kick, and athletes are constantly oscillating between highs and lows, and we're chasing the highs. Mm-hmm. But the never enough is that when you have an athlete, and this is the part that sucks, and one that I've addressed, and I want to hear your advice on this, is like because you feel like you're very level, and that's important. But athletes that win a championship, you often hear it. And I said it on television a few years ago, and I was like ashamed of myself because I was already like deep in therapy at the time. And they asked me like, how do you feel? I feel really great, and like we're gonna enjoy this one, and back to work tomorrow.
Yeah,
and it's like, come on, man, why'd you say that? Just like, is it ingrained in you to say that? Because I think a lot of athletes miss out on that opportunity to sit and enjoy the benefit of all of that hard work that led to that hat trick, because they're always like, well, I can't let up now.
Yeah. Well, apply that to every fucking activity ever. Apply that to entrepreneurship. Apply that to me as Onnit was growing. not even wanting to look at what happened in the past, where I got, because it was like, well, got to keep growing, got to keep grinding, got to keep pushing, got to keep making it. Well, thanks for all this, everybody, but let's just focus on the next thing. Let's focus on what I can do. And it's just this weird thing where it's almost like the acknowledgement of it and the enjoyment of it makes you more scared of not having it.
Yep.
So you almost deny it. You almost are like, yeah, whatever. I'm a successful businessman. Yeah, whatever. Okay, I'm in this relationship. Yeah, whatever. But I don't want to really acknowledge it because then I have to face my fear of losing it, which is really ultimately a fear of death in a certain way, because we're all going to die. We're all going to have to let go of all of these things. So we can either pretend and disengage with life itself, disengage with the totality of life and be like, nope, life's not so good. The championships aren't that good. The sex isn't good. Whatever. My girl isn't that good. My friend, nothing's that good. So when I die, fuck it. It's okay.
Yeah, Mom and Dad, I'm not even listening to you talk about your will. No way. You guys aren't dying.
Yeah, exactly. You just disengage from all the pleasures of life, all the things of life, and hardly let it in, because really you're scared that you're going to have to let it go. Or you just live the fuck out of it. And when it comes time to die, you're like, man, what a fucking ride. I lived the hell out of that. When I won that championship, I was so fucking happy. Yeah. I drank champagne for 3 days and it was fucking incredible. And I'm glad I did, and that's, I think, a choice. That's the choice to not be afraid, to have courage and love, even though it's temporary. And maybe because it's temporary. And it's like the Japanese samurai with the cherry blossom tree. Like, one of the reasons that was such a powerful symbol for them was because it was so transient. They would bloom and die so quickly. And that was their notion of life. Like, celebrate this bloom because it's going to die so quickly. Celebrate your life as a samurai, in the Bushido code. Celebrate that because you will die so quickly.
Yep.
And it's this idea that you can actually use that, memento mori. You're talking about Ryan, he sells those coins that have that on there. Yeah. Remember, you're going to die. Like, you can use your death and the end of your career and the end of the relationship, which will come at some point, and the death of your parents, to remind you how much to fucking enjoy it now.
Yeah. I love that. I love the Bushido code. And one of my close friends, and also top player in the world, and has been building PLL with us, is Tom Schreiber, and he often references the warrior poet. And it's a lot what we talk about internally as what we're doing with the Premier Lacrosse League, is that there are stereotypes and assumptions a lot of times to jocks, athletes being jocks, being dumb, and not being capable. And in a way, a lot of people from the get-go who were close to this and knew about this building from the distance, like, you can't do this. They've never run a sports league before. They've never owned a sports team. They don't understand how complicated and difficult it is to find a network partner and negotiate terms and understand that. And when we talk about it, is it while there are certain characteristics of athletes and teams to be mindful of as you grow personally, there's also the commitment to work ethic that is, I think, unmatched a lot of times from the lessons of sport that can cross over into life. And that work ethic for me, whether it was applying to my learnings in therapy personally to building these businesses, and this one in particular with my brother and in entrepreneurship, is that notion of warrior poet. Like, you're an athlete and you go to war on field against your opponent, and off of it you're sophisticated and you're learning and you're intelligent and you're humble, and that type of stuff is what I think about a lot.
Yeah, and those examples, you look at some of the greatest warrior, like one of the greatest warriors of all time, Miyamoto Musashi, right? Amazing at calligraphy, amazing at writing, amazing at so many facets of life. And he won 100 hand-to-hand duels, sometimes with a wooden oar from his ship, sometimes with a sword. Like, okay, it's warrior poet example. Then you think of, all right, let's think of the greatest thinker of all time. Well, some of them, you think of Socrates, right? And you think, oh yes, a great philosopher, Socrates. You listen to stories of him in battle, and he was a fucking lion. Yeah. He was a lion. There's a story of Alcibiades, who is his lover, and he falls behind in enemy lines, is completely like about to be overrun and fucking it's Socrates going full 300 move style and like hurling over people and landing with his shield. Socrates. And like protecting him and fighting people off until he can fall back into the lines and regain his weapons and like get his feet up. Like that's the shit that has always been around and is always available. Like we can be all the things. We don't need to be that spiritual thing that just gets rid of the ascetic, that gets rid of the importance of the body and doesn't train and doesn't get to move and surrenders their sexuality and surrenders all this so they can be pious and in union with God. How about make God all of it? How about it's all of or nothing is, as Paul Selig says, like the sexuality, the working out, the sweat pumping through your veins, all of it, bring that up to the level of divinity itself and experience all the intellect and all the struggle, all the things, man.
Yeah.
That's our fucking birthright.
Yep.
And having people sing that song is really important, so that they can realize that, all right, maybe you have some ways that you skew. Cool. That just gives you more growth that you can get in another area and another way to learn.
Yep.
That's going to be awesome.
It's learning, and it's having the ambition around it, the curiosity, the willingness to ask. Howard Schultz, the former CEO and chairman of Starbucks, says the most underrated characteristic of any leader or coach or athlete is their willingness to ask for help. It's the fastest track that you can take to improvement. Yet no one wants to ask because it shows that, and I understand if you're an employee and you ask your boss for help and they've already given you orders and you don't know what to do or you forgot, they might be pissed at you and that could lead to you losing your job. And as an athlete who's supposed to train and know the playbook, and all of a sudden you're in this sweltering moment in the fourth quarter and you didn't hear the player, you forgot the play, you're not going to ask the coach, he's going to sub you out, and all of a sudden you fuck it up and the team loses because you couldn't get over the mindset of just asking in the huddle.
Or you're lost and you need some directions. And
Totally.
you're like, nope. Gonna fucking sort this shit out. That's a cliche.
Let me refresh my ways here.
You know why it's a cliche? It's because we still do it.
Someone right next to me in New York, you could have said, go left, Paul, and I'm making laps around this city because I'm trying to rely on my own
which
ability.
aisle are the condoms in? I don't know. That could save me 5 minutes every time I go to fucking CVS.
Yeah, they're
But I
impossible
don't
to
ask.
find.
No, I just search. I just hunt. Like I can't communicate. Like I'm in a place where there's no language. It's just like, no, I don't want to ask anybody that. Why would I?
Totally.
It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But we get stuck in these patterns where we're like, no, I should be able to figure this out. Or you're embarrassed about something. And just the more you can release that, the freer you are, the smoother, the faster, and the more enjoyable all this shit gets.
Totally. Best part about technology too, as it's proliferated, is our content now, and that type of information that you're seeking is ubiquitous.
Yep.
I mentioned mentorship, and a lot of people think, wow, would love to take that trip to Peru with Aubrey Marcus. I'd love to sit down with Tim Ferriss for coffee once a week, or meet Ryan Holiday and spend time. The good news about it is you can actually do that. You don't have to be hand in hand with Aubrey, Tim, and Ryan. You can listen to their podcasts.
Yep.
You can read their books.
Yep.
Right. And your 5 people or your tribe, as you had mentioned, you can surround yourself with those people, dead or alive, by the content that's out there.
Yep. Yeah. Marcus Aurelius can be one of your people.
That's right.
If you really immerse yourself with his work, you don't have to have the physical representation.
Yeah.
You can really actually, and podcasts are even more so, because then it gives the robust element. Writing is one way, and it's a great way to tap into the information and some of the character of the person writing it. But podcasts are so robust that I think it is fucking an awesome way to really get to surround yourself with people of different ideas and mindsets. And in the time we live too, it's like there's still some ideas that people have about traditional education. I get some people like, oh, should I go to school? Should I go back to school and get my, nutrition degree? I was like, no, because that shit's like 10 years old that made it through the approval process here. Like, you want that? Like, here's books that are coming out now from real experts now. Oh, should I go get my, psychology, certification from this and this? Like, no, here's the research that's coming out now from the experts now, and it's just a different time.
Totally.
When those old certifications and those old models are really kind of useless now and almost a hindrance, because you're going back and learning information that has been so quickly outdated.
Yeah.
Like in 1850, information moved fucking slow. Like go to school. They had the libraries, you had more books, you had more access to shit, and they had the most, current thinkers there. But now in 2018, like no.
That's why there's so much advancement. Shit just moves fast.
It's fast.
We were talking about it in the subway heading over here. Is like, man, there's a lot of people in the subway. Imagine if we had to pay the teller right now to put more money on our Metro card. We would be in line for 35 minutes. Now our commute would have planned out for an hour. It's just like something physical like that. And then, pulling out an almanac, like best thing that's happened. I have ADHD and an auditory processing disorder, and qualified for all of the note takers and extra time going through the school systems. Best thing that happened to me was Google and autocorrect spell checks. Like I don't have to worry about the nuance of areas where I was slower or missed. And I can just allow my ability to kind of create to kind of overtake all the other stuff.
Yeah. Allow your strengths to shine, and then allow either technology or community to buffer those things. And I think that was also the beauty of tribe too, ultimately, because if you were not good at something, if you really sucked at bow and arrows, if you're in a tribe with some other good people who are gangsters with bow and arrows, you know what? You're eating meat. You good. We're focused on the berries. I don't know. Maybe focus on fucking art or storytelling, or maybe you fucking are a good mask maker. It doesn't matter.
The fire.
Start the fire. Something. You're going to be good at something. And then when you put that in a community, everybody can round out their strengths. Everybody can share the spoils. And then that's, I think, when we're the most happy again. And then that's the point where we can replace, going all the way back to the beginning, that special thing about sports and about military is if we can cultivate our own tribe, our own community, create our own trials, our own rituals, our own ways that we push against the resistance of the world together, arm in arm, brothers and sisters, working on the same thing, sharing what we earn. Now we're back. We're back to the start, the long tail hero's journey of humanity, moving away from tribes, getting solipsistic and alone, finding these temporary solutions through sports and military, but eventually coming back to tribal living where you have people you're bound to as brothers.
That's been the most powerful thing about building the Premier Lacrosse League is we have 160 players of the best in the world in lacrosse that have essentially locked arms and said, we're going to build the future of this sport and the league of the future. And we're going to do that in a really innovative and unique way. We're going to go tour-based because we're solving for operational inefficiencies of city-based models, because we don't have the population of fandom that football and basketball does. So why try to force that square peg into a round hole? Let's do something where we're optimizing the venues and we're in multiple markets throughout the season versus confining us to fewer than a dozen, like most niche team sports leagues on the city model. Now all of a sudden we can go tour-based like NASCAR and be in emerging markets and be out west in Pacific Northwest and down south in Texas, solving for that, and then building something that's player first.
Yeah.
Because we're a single entity, our player comp now is quadrupled. Everyone has health insurance, access to the league. And the most important thing is all of our players have equity.
Yeah.
And that's something that is often the reason for misalignment between a league and its players, and why CBAs are formed, and why players associations are at odds with commissioners. Is everyone's fighting over the pot rather than being aligned and doing something in a really innovative, modern way.
Fuck yeah! I hope this is a model for multiple sports to come.
Thanks,
I'm glad you did it here, and we all get to watch and support. And hopefully it blows up. Hopefully it blows up like when fucking cricket changed the length of their games. I watched this cool thing on Netflix about cricket. And cricket had these long test matches, it was like 3 weeks, and they made them like 1 week. And then they somebody had the genius idea, no, we're going to make them like 4 hours. They'll be over in a night. And just shit blew up. Yeah. And all the old timers you can't play cricket for 4 hours. Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, fuck you. We're playing it for 4 hours. And everybody's like, woo. And all of India, 1 billion people watch every time.
Yeah.
For 4-hour matches. I hope it fucking goes like that. And
appreciate
it's just amazing, man.
We do too. And we talk about UFC a lot and taking MMA to scale. And we have lacrosse, which has product market fit. No disrespect to Drone Race League, but we're not building something from scratch.
Yeah.
People know what lacrosse is. It's the oldest sport in North America.
Yeah.
So we're just going to try to commercialize it.
Beautiful. Well, fuck, man. It was good hanging with you.
Great.
Let's do another podcast on yours.
I would love to.
All right. We'll get it done. Everybody, watch Premier Lacrosse League. Follow you at Paul Rabil, Rabil. And beautiful. I'll see you again soon, brother. Peace.